All right, we are back with a general follow-up on two cases revolving around different football players in the NFL of varying ages and statuses in the NFL in regards to things that occurred right around the Super Bowl, right at the time of them. Both incredibly dark in their own ways, and just situations that, honestly, especially for the one, I really don't even know anymore in regards to that one. No matter which one you look at, whether it be Darron Lee's case or James Pearce Jr.'s case, these are players that had pretty much everything you could ask for in terms of somewhat prosperous NFL careers, and at least on the surface, ideal situations surrounding them. Yet, in some way, shape, or form, in domestic relations, these conflicts have now resulted in trials that can affect pretty much both of their lives in extreme ways. And it's just a sad thing to see. To start it out with Darron Lee's case, to take it all the way back, for those who might not be familiar with it, in short, the man is accused of murdering his girlfriend. And this apparently happened in his home state, in their own home. And this has been under trial for at least the last few days or so. This last report and a slew of them have come from the prior week. Because he was, I guess, charged for it, or at least arrested for the ordeal last month. And of course, they have to go through the entire legal process to see if everything lines up. With pretty much everything that I read in that original report, it's not looking great for him at all as it is. And that's before we even get into all of the evidence that they'd have to unravel over the course of this case. Initially reading that report when it first came out, and I could not believe that something like this had gone down. And per what they're alleging, this looks to be somewhat true. There looks to be some merit to this. And I'll have to reiterate this again, but with some of the injuries in play here, and with some of the evidence that they're trying to find, they are still sticking to the notion that they are not completely removing the death penalty off of the table in regards to him. Now, there has not been anything, I will stress, there's been nothing that suggested that Darron Lee is going to actually get the death penalty as of the recording of this video. That hasn't been confirmed yet. They haven't had any kind of verdict on that whatsoever. But it's not off the table. And again, from literally going to just being a general person living in a standard community and living your daily life out, doing whatever it is that you may do, you are now risking all of that in your entire livelihood with everything that you were alleged to do in this situation. So, as this quote states from WDF 12, Tennessee-based news organization, it appears, quote, several pieces of evidence were introduced during the preliminary hearing of Darron Lee, and this goes all the way back to March 9th, which again makes sense. So a little more than a week and some change ago, that was when it was scheduled in the first place, per the initial reports last month. So again, we can say all we want to about it not looking optimal for Darron Lee in that regard. But still, as the saying goes, he is still innocent until proven guilty. You still have to get a good amount of solid evidence and hardcore proof with what it is that you are trying to indict the man for. And that goes for any case. Because as we've seen in some recent ones, if you don't have good evidence to back up the argument that you're trying to make, the case is going to fall through, and you're not going to get the terms of justice in which you might be seeking. So every little detail matters. Even down to things that, on the outside looking in, people wouldn't even be paying much attention to. With you being in that field, that's your job. You have to ensure that you have everything lined up in the exact way that it needs to be, and in the exact way that a court would be approaching this from, based on the argument you're sending out towards the entire thing. And what we would go on to hear, it's a doozy. It's a doozy. That is the lightest way that I can put something like this. And again, even with some of the material aside, I'm going to be as fair as possible. But it just really goes to show you just how difficult the position of trying to represent these individuals can really be. Because when hearing about some of this stuff, it is damn near incredibly difficult to look at the evidence and suggest that anything else other than what is being alleged occurred in that moment. It's hard. For the first thing, I won't necessarily get into the quotes about it, but they did mention that there was body cam footage aligning up, I guess, with some time elapsed between Perpetual, his girlfriend's death, and the, I guess, police officers, on dispatch handling the operations on scene. And essentially, Lee was trying his hardest in that situation. Again, we don't know exactly whether or not he's guilty. We can't assume it. But there's a bit of a deflecting pattern here with what he's saying. Officers arrive and they see his girlfriend lying on the floor, and he's essentially saying to that, quote, "I don't know. I thought she would have said something, but I have no idea. I was upstairs." And then this article also goes on to detail from WDEF as well that they ask about all of the broken material, because there are a bunch of different objects just shattered completely. He mentioned something about the window being left open and having different areas of the house explode. Again, you can be the judge of how good those excuses may be or how good those statements may hold up in a court of law. I can't really speculate on that. You are on the body cam footage. At least you have access to it, but of course that's only one piece of the story. And there's gonna have to be, in a situation like that, a ton of conclusive evidence. It's not just a matter of, even if he were to go out on camera and say flat out that he did this and this and this and this to completely align with what is being alleged on the other side, you still have to get different forensic evidence. You have to try to get, in a way, maybe a few statements from the family of this particular girlfriend that may speak to the tone of the relationship. Because even then, even with Darron Lee's history in regards to maybe toxic relationships or toxic, I guess, spurts of behavior on his end, we still have not heard anything from his girlfriend's family. They may have some knowledge on how that relationship went. And even if they don't, that could also be another avenue to look through in terms of potential evidence as to the exact dynamic in this entire thing. But body cam footage isn't going to be the only thing that you can take into account here. It's just not going to work that way, to be honest with you. So, they look at it from the physical lens, the forensic ideal. Not necessarily in terms of DNA, but they had a medical examiner go through and look through different injuries here that were seen and discovered on the corpse at the time, or probably a few, hours, maybe some days after. It's supposed to be quick, but, you have to get all that gathered together, right? So as this quote states right here, crime scene photos showed blood, both seen by the naked eye of investigators and through the reveal agent Blue Star, in numerous rooms inside of the house. So if that's the case, then it looks as if at least one of the initial statements from Lee Zen in the body cam footage would probably be deemed just completely ineffective at that point. That's just not going to add up if there is blood being tracked all over the house. But okay. The preliminary autopsy report by Hamilton County Medical Examiner Dr. Stephen Cogswell revealed that Perpetual suffered 12 different injuries that combined constitute blunt force trauma. Just keep that in mind. Because they were not only investigating in this trial what exactly happened to Perpetual in this situation, but they also wanted to get a sense of, if I remember from the initial report, exactly how she got into this specific position that they found her in at the time of discovery. Because there hasn't been any intel on that whatsoever. And so maybe these injuries, depending on one, what they are, and two, the kind of impact that they left, three, the angle in which they were created, and four, I guess, the matter of the situation that would bring on such trauma in that regard. Those are all things that they would be looking for in this situation. 12 different injuries, though. So there are a number of different ways to go with that. This could be deemed as something fairly toxic in a domestic realm. Like, it would be naive thinking as well, but there are other ways as well to suggest that, okay, maybe this girlfriend was not in the right headspace. That's another argument that at least Lee's team could probably try to spur up when hearing that kind of information. Is it necessarily correct? I can't speak to that. But again, you just have to try to balance this out. Because, again, until we get the hardcore proof, you can't really assume anything. But just hear about some of these injuries, though. As WDF lists here, confluent contusion of right side of the face, large right scalp hematoma, large right subdural hematoma over entire cerebral hemisphere, confluent abrasion of left side of face, laceration at left brow ridge, fracture of left zygoma, the cheekbone, fractures of maxillary central incisor teeth, perimortem fracture of cervical spine at C1/2, multiple shallow perimortem stab wounds of chest and left thigh, and recent bite mark of left shoulder. Again, I am no medical expert, so I can't just go out on a limb and try to guess what every single one of these may mean, may allude to in terms of body parts. But the scale of those kinds of injuries ranges far too much in severity and number to suggest that anything other than, at the very least, a dire situation occurred that led to Perpetual being killed or being left dead in this situation. Allegedly. This is not a run-of-the-mill, this is just something normal that occurs all the time. This is not that kind of situation. If you have that many injuries taking place, something clearly happened. And there were stuff that occur right around the time as well. A recent bite mark and perimortem probably before the passing. In Perpetual's case, fracture of a cervical spine. Some of that stuff is just far too uncommon in your standard battery situation. This had to be far deeper. And again, it could lean that way, but you have to get harder proof. And that's fair to say. That is a laundry list of different injuries to be suffered in that situation. And any one of them, if they're severe enough, could lead to a weakened state. But I digress. So you have all that going on. But of course, when you are trying to get all your evidence lined up, you're going to need a lot more than even just that. And apparently, the biggest headline to come through this case so far is that Lee, if all these are proven to be true, if all these correlate with some kind of happening in this particular case, and if it is proven that Lee was well aware also of what he was doing, if there was any sort of thought about any psychological evaluation or mental evaluation or anything like that in regards to him and his state of mind at the time of a incident, barring its occurrence, if this lines up, allegedly, he handed them hardcore proof on a silver platter. Because, as multiple articles state across all of what I've read, allegedly, quote, per USA Today, a former Ohio State University football player and New Albany native asked ChatGPT about what to do for someone who was unresponsive more than 12 hours before calling police, who found his girlfriend dead. End quote. Again, that aside, because I would have my own things to say about anything involving AI. I'm not going to have that diatribe here. But again, reading it and reading the context, are we serious? I would hope it's not true. But if it is, it just adds another dark, twisted layer in this case. Because no matter how you approach it, he obviously, in this case, if this is all true, wasn't trying to stomach all of the guilt that is more than likely going to come with something like that. It's a cover-up in every sense of the word. Whether he was to allegedly, if this is true, try to do it in his own space, free of any sort of exposure to the public, and try to keep it under wraps as best as he possibly could, or if he chose to at least maybe seek help elsewhere, like this situation. We have a person just completely lifeless. And as a result, the desperation that comes with having something like that occur, especially in your own space, whether or not you caused it, may have led Lee to take on doing all of that. Now, for the context, as the USA Today article also states, the detective testified Lee called the AI agent Allie and sent messages under the moniker Xander, a shortened version of Lee's middle name. End quote. Before getting into that. And at that rate, that just makes things... You see how difficult this is already getting. You using that name or not does not matter necessarily, because they can still, if these are messages that can be seen elsewhere, they have access to the database. They can track down your IP and get a ping on your location to identify who exactly you are, and also what exact computer or source or device this information is coming from. So that's already something that software teams can handle and cybersecurity people can handle. That's strike one. To use a name that is pretty much native to who you are as a person, that specific name is so rare that just makes a potential search even easier. If they recognize that it's your middle name, and they can just start removing, by process of elimination, each and every other person with the same name inhabiting the same place because you chose to use that, allegedly. Which just, like, okay. But into the context, and I mean, yeah, it's already, I'll just give a warning here. I already should have. Overall, with what I have to cover throughout the entire video. But here is a warning. Because some of the context, gets graphic. So, if you are very sensitive to those kinds of situations, I cannot blame you if you do choose to leave the video. Alright. So I'll have to note as well, because you can't see it unless you research it yourself, but I'll denote whenever Lee is typing up something or talking about something, and also when the AI agent is. Alright, so this is the entire thread. Lee saying, quote, "Don't know what to do right now. Fiance did her crazy thing again, and now she's messed up. I wake up and she has 2 swollen eyes. I didn't do anything. Self-inflicted. She stabbed herself, slit her eye. I don't know, but she isn't waking up or responding. What do I do?" Allie, what should I tell my friend to handle someone non-responsive but wants to call the police? Agent says, okay, but this serious, but you can protect everyone. Here's exactly what to tell your friend step by step. Lee says, doesn't want to. ChatGPT says, got it. Doesn't. Here's exactly what is the safest way to handle it without framing it as police trouble. Lee says, stab wound like punctures from hitting anything. ChatGPT says, yeah, it can happen, but there's to make. Can a slip and fall cause puncture wounds? Yes, but only under specific conditions. What it can look like: small, deep puncture-looking wounds, minimal bleeding at first, then swelling. Looks stabby even though it wasn't. Bottom line, yes, falls can cause puncture-appearing wounds. They usually don't look like clean knife stabs. Context and surrounding injury pattern matters more than the hole itself. If you want, tell me where on the body, how many punctures, depth, size, what objects were nearby. I can help you sanity check whether it lines up with a slip and fall or if it's something that should be evaluated ASAP. Lee says, yes, middle gut and side hip. ChatGPT says, if you want, you can tell me depth, bleeding amount, time since injury, whether pain is increasing. I'll help you decide the right level of care. No panic, just smart steps. Lee says, both her eyes are swollen. ChatGPT says, okay, pause the jokes for a half second because while yes, the eyes being swollen is still possible from a fall, but it crosses into seek immediate help territory, not meh, ice it. And Lee, for the final message in this thread, says, bet. She got blood all over the damn place. End quote to that entire thread. You read all of that, and you hear all of it being read. And you try as hard as you possibly can in that situation, whether you are a lawyer trying to navigate this entire case, or whether you're simply a person like myself trying to understand what's going on here, okay? The material in which is being put into the prompt and the responses from the agent in this situation, and also Lee himself in this situation in regards to those, make it look as if this was something incredibly violent. Full stop. Whether or not we know that Lee is fully innocent or fully guilty at this time, that kind of evidence being displayed in the first hearing, mind you. This is the first hearing, and they already got access to that. Can you imagine moving forward just how much more they can find with having this as the baseline? You hate to see a situation where, again, you are not just having your life on the line. That family is, again, still seeking clarity, the Perpetua family, in regards to exactly what happened to their daughter. And the context that all these people on the jury potentially are having to listen to throughout this entire thing. You don't think they're going to be shaken up by that in some fashion as well? They may be a little impartial to it. And, of course, in cases like that, you can't have anybody related to either the plaintiff or the defendant serving on trial in any regard, because that would be conflicting. But they're going to be shaken up hearing about this as well. You can guarantee that. Because it's like, what do you mean? I'd be stretching it to break every single aspect of this down. You, again, hear it back, play it back, look it up, search it for yourself. It's online through multiple articles. You can just listen to that one time, look at it one good time, and understand just how incredibly fucked up this is. Incredibly. And I think that final message says it all. The tone of this. So-and-so did her crazy thing again. So-and-so got blood all over the damn place. But, again, go back to what he said himself in the body cam footage. I thought she would have said something. She left the window open. I was just going to sleep. I thought she was going to come down and finish it up. So exactly what is it? Because again, running with that narrative that they may try to forge in regards to Perpetual not being in the right state of mind, to have that amount of injury and to have that amount of blunt force trauma take place, to have that kind of blood tracking all over the walls, all over the floors, with the luminol and Blue Star being sprayed and illuminating those spots. How can people really expect to believe that this victim in this situation brought each and every single one of those things upon herself and upon her own volition? It's hard to suggest that right now. It really is. It is unfortunate for Darron Lee, but again, I can't sit here and say flat out, oh, he's lying, oh, he's fucking guilty. But there are clearly inconsistencies in what you are saying, and there is a bunch of physical evidence in the first hearing already pointing to this being damn near exactly what they're alleging this to be. A violent crime that left your girlfriend in such horrible shape. And also dead. That's exactly what this is looking right now. And again, self-incriminating to a T. The parentheses are trying to do so much work in that first one. I didn't do anything self-inflicted. Because that is the idea. If he does believe in his own heart and mind that he is truly innocent, and he'll definitely approach this case in that manner. But how are you going to say that exactly after saying that both of her eyes are swollen? It's difficult to hear that and think that, for one, she was around enough resources to do that to both of her eyes. And two, on her own strength, she had enough power to do that and also get a handle on blowing both of her eye sockets out. Like, again, they have to look into it more, I'm telling you. But it's also like, some of that is just like, dude, there's almost no other way to really think about this. It's not exactly common sense, but at the same damn time, come on, bro. Like, only thing that could have made this even worse for Darron Lee is if he actually bought into fully and comprehensively responding to what some of these responses were getting at from the agent in this situation. Because some of these are good questions. They're going to look for location of these injuries as well. They're going to look for the amount of punctures taken to truly identify this as blunt force trauma, which, again, they did earlier in the report. They're going to look for the size and depth of these things in these different wounds in her body. They're going to look at that. Because, again, same thing. If that was the idea, that she had done all this to herself, okay, we will find out and see, depending on just how narrow or deep these punctures continuously go. So, just thinking about it that way and taking it all in, of course, there is still more to come. This case is not even remotely over. But man, once more, man, even with seemingly still to this point a limited amount of evidence and information, all of this is looking out of favor for Darron Lee right now. I can't even lie about that. And I want to be as fair and objective as possible, because any number of things can happen. You never truly know. But again, from an outsider looking in, this does not look, from an optical lens, remotely in favor of Darron Lee right now. Things can change, of course, but this is a very bleak picture, to say the least. And as this quote from WMGT 41, NBC in Macon, Georgia, this quote says, "There's a whole new frontier," said NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. "You have ChatGPT, AI, smartwatches, Alexa, all of those devices can now lead investigators in a criminal case." End quote. Now again, I'm not going on that diatribe here, because it's, yes, in a way, in terms of regulations, sure, stuff like that would be needed for this kind of situation. But to digress from that point, yes, with the scale in which it can be used, and the scale in which some of these things, even by mere happenstance, can be on a person at the time of these specific incidents, the way that technology can, again, be altered and just explored, searched in ways by different people who work in the software industry to get a handle on what, when, where a person is and who they might be in terms of identification. When you look at some of the face identification techniques on phones and everything like that, all of that recognition, all of those patterns can definitely prove to be useful in cases like these now. So, as wild as it was to hear about that as a report, honestly, it's not something that can continue to be glossed over. Because that is just how some people are wired. And no matter where it operates, no matter in the space, no matter of the space where a given incident might take place. Crimes are exactly that. The scale matters. The severity of the crime matters, of course. But when it comes to this specifically, even with it being alleged, it is exactly what it is. When you hear something like that, you have to take that seriously, no matter the media it is performed through or maybe related from. That matters. And again, hopefully more answers can come from something like this. Because, by goodness, they are needed. Not only to see whether or not these things truly line up with different incidents from Darron Lee in the past, as I'd mentioned in the previous video relating to this. And if he is truly as horrible of an individual as he's being made out to be right now with the way this evidence is trending. And for the sake of Perpetual's family in this situation, they need the clarity as well. As this quote states from USA Today, Perpetual's family has filed a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against Lee. The Hamilton County District's Attorney's Office previously said it was evaluating the case to determine if the death penalty would be sought. That process remains ongoing with no decision yet made, end quote. And again, no matter how you frame it, it's like $50 million. Oh, okay. That's not going to get me my daughter back. And that's not going to take the image that they might have seen at this point, because you need that evidence as well. Hearing it, hearing that happened, took everything out of them, zapped all of the energy that they had in that moment. And then to see that image of her lying in whatever position she was found in, on the floor, with all of those injuries to her body, and all of those bruises. You can't even imagine what that felt like for them to go through in that situation. And we still know little about what actually happened. So, more answers have got to come there. And yeah, cap it off, as I said, I already mentioned, in Lee's case, like, those actions, even if they, may have happened, may not have happened, allegedly, like, dude, no matter what, like, this is going to be something that is difficult to spur back from as an individual. You're even remotely associated with something like this, regardless of whether or not you actually conducted it. That's just always going to leave such a dark shadow cast over you as a person. And if this gets into an incredibly drastic point, they're not even, as I said, taking the death penalty off the table. And you can literally go from seemingly being on top of the world to now sitting in an electric chair, or however they would go about handling and executing a death penalty situation in the state of Tennessee. This is a scary situation overall. And there should be genuine concern. But again, we will see. And with that, now I have to transfer into James Pearce Jr. Because again, similar thing here. Another player, not out of the NFL, in fact, just getting his career started, just putting together a tremendous rookie season, leading a much improved pass rush for the Falcons from last year compared to, well, the year before last compared to last season, I should say. And in a matter of moments, you go from having your literal mother standing up on stage saying the best things about you as a person, spanning way further than people may ever get to understand about you as just an athlete and another football player, to now encountering something like this, to where it was alleged that he had been stalking, harassing, and in ways violating the space of Rickea Jackson, his former girlfriend. The initial report suggested that he was going to be facing, multiple charges and was arrested for this last month, with there also being a mention that Jackson had filed a petition to the court at the time and stated that she wanted and was more than willing, rather, to testify in this case if need be. So those were the main things that came from that early situation. Before getting into the major development in this, there is some cleanup here because a recent report would come out. This one from the Los Angeles Times essentially stating that, there was a little more context to the petition that we previously did not know. As this specific quote states, in a court filing, Jackson said that she broke up with Pearce Jr. weeks before the incident that led to his arrest. She said Pearce offered her $200,000 to remain in a relationship with him, and that his behavior toward her became increasingly alarming. According to ESPN, at least 7 other calls to 911 police in the months before the February 7th incident reported Pearce Jr. to be stalking or harassing an unnamed girlfriend. End quote. Now, from that standpoint, with some of the stuff that I already cited about him, consistently calling the number, even though she didn't want to have any connection with him at that point, that just expands further on that point to me. It wasn't anything that was like, oh, okay, this is a completely new update that I'm going to focus on talking about in a potential follow-up, because it's like, by itself, there was already understanding that there was consistency in Pearce Jr.'s actions leading up to this entire thing. It's like, at a point, exactly how many times do you need to hear in his situation that she wants no part of the relationship anymore? How many more times do you need to hear that ramming through your head from her over and over and over again to actually understand the point? And he still, allegedly, thought it would be a good idea to continue acting like this. I don't think that any of these, let me see. I don't think any of these articles necessarily talk about it, but I've been watching different videos from other channels that have been, covering some of the updates in this case as well. They dug a little further into the documents, and they found that there were cases where he was showing up to these houses and being told to leave from an unnamed individual. And in some cases, he would comply. In other cases, he'd still try to barge his way in. Then there was a different occurrence where allegedly his father, James Pearce Jr.'s father, had to come to one of these places and warn the unnamed individual that Pearce Jr. was coming back in some capacity. Now again, this individual is unnamed. It could be Jackson. It could be an entirely different person. But to consistently act in that manner is just incredibly ridiculous. I mean, for one, the people being involved in these situations as potential victims of this. You can't even step outside of your house without him almost being 2 feet behind you at that point. How exactly are you supposed to move forward with your life if you have to keep looking over your shoulders at this fucking 6'5" mammoth of an individual trying to hawk you down for the purposes of extending and prolonging a relationship that wasn't meant to last after a while? Now, again, there were different reports, and I don't think there's much merit to it. They had stated that, okay, Jackson thought that he was cheating on her, and that spurred the desire to end the entire thing. I don't know how true that is. Whether it is or not, once that decision was made, it stands. It is what it is. And no amount of anything is going to change Jackson's mind in that situation. It clearly didn't. And yet, Pearce Jr. allegedly was still trying. Still. Because that is insane when you think about it. Now, today, and I have to read through it, the WNBA did just pass a major update to their CBA negotiations that will allow for $7 million in cap space for each and every single team, along with the expansion team set to come in to the league over the next few years. So that's massive. And for players who have had such low salaries to the point where they've had to play overseas, like a Brittany Griner being arrested as a prisoner of war for simply doing so and just happening to have hashish oil in her briefcase at the time of her arrest that sent shockwaves around the world in terms of diplomatic, aspects, and also the sports world in general, to also having to play in the unrivaled league and get money from there as well, just to string it together in the off season and keep everything afloat as an athlete in that league, to now potentially having a bigger boost in security overall when it comes to housing and when it comes to income. That's great. Jackson's contract before this, like many other star caliber players, was incredibly low at the time. So a $200,000 offer from Pearce Jr. is by and large going to lap most of what she is making solely as an athlete. I think she's had a few sponsorships that could be the case, and that could help, but not really all that much, especially compared to other players who might have a much larger profile. Jackson's obviously still on her rise in the WNBA. It'll take some time, but we'll see about that. Anyways, she's still seeing a $200,000 offer from you just to keep the relationship going, and also allegedly $75,000 to go with him on one of these trips or whatever the hell. Still said, no, I'm not. No. So, what exactly did you not understand at that point in time? You think she's speaking tongues or something? You think she's speaking a foreign language? Bruh, she told you no. How many different ways does she have to tell you no? And how many different ways does she need to relay that message to you? Text you, call you, tell you, it's off, it's over. For you to still go ahead and allegedly make all these threats to the point where she is quite literally fearing for her life. I think I had cited this already, but to just add to this situation, it had gotten to such a damn point that this is what she wrote in her statement officially. Quote, James Pearce Jr. has threatened to kill me, has threatened to harm me, has threatened to injure me, has threatened to place a bag over my head, and has verbally and physically abused me on more than one occasion. End quote. So you tally all of that up, and you have the nerve to allegedly offer her to stay in a relationship that clearly is putting her in the worst quality of life situation she could envision for herself right now. Just really think about that for a second. From the outside looking in. And that's before we even get into the most pressing update on this case. Why would she willingly stay in that relationship and deal with that shit if this is allegedly what was going on? What would she do that for? There is no reason to. Whatsoever. And it just goes back to the point. It's like, if you're Pearce Jr., you still are trying to represent much more in your situation. Like, I can't speak to exactly what the tone of the relationship was and what maybe his thoughts might be about retaining it. If you're acting like that, you don't have a chance. Maybe you did truly feel something genuine in this personal relationship. And that's not something that a person like myself or anybody else can take away. But at the same time, when you heard that it was done, it's like, what made him believe that he was not still fighting and representing far more and far greater in his overall life than to try to hold on and repair something that was fully broken and called off immediately. I just don't understand that mindset from Pearce Jr. if that's truly how he was carrying himself. Because, like, and we'll get into the charges for in a second, but in one of the same videos, like, I can put it, because it should have been microphone. Bruh, they go further into the court documents, and bruh, we'd already heard at times that, okay, he rammed the car into the police officer's knee, allegedly. He'd been chasing her down in her car for miles, stopped after a while, and approached her vehicle, tried to open the door before Jackson pulled off, and then Pearce Jr. tried to get her back before she attempted to reach the Darron County Sheriff's Office and rammed his vehicle into hers. We had all of that, so that'll save you some time in regards to the update, because we'd already established that in the first report and first string of reports from this case. But I heard something different in that microphone video. Allegedly, this man, during that same stop, jumped on her car. Do I even have to say any more? You are a 22-year-old man, younger than Jackson, standing at 6'5", as a physical force, deciding to jump and throw your entire body weight and additional momentum on the top of her car? Allegedly, because you potentially can't handle rejection at all. What the fuck is that? That's the most ridiculous thing possible. And again, in this situation, you have to be as fair and objective as possible. I think that's pretty damn fair to say. You cannot be fucking serious to act like that in that situation. And then to be, again, calling this woman up to that point several times when the relationship had already been done. What is the point of that? What do you gain? You are wasting your own time. This was a non-negotiable thing for her. This was a very easy and logical decision on her part. If she thought that she was in danger being around you, my guy, allegedly. Like, no. Bro. But I digress. No matter how you take it into account, you have Jackson's life at risk, and now you have the entire livelihood moving forward for James Pearce Jr. at risk as well. And again, if all of this is proven to be true, this was something fairly preventable on his end, not hers. You think she just woke up and asked for that kind of alleged behavior to be conducted towards her? No. Dude. No. As far as we know right now, unless any other groundbreaking evidence comes out, because again, you have to leave the door open to that, just to be open-minded about it. You have to leave it open to the fact that there could be other pieces of evidence coming out that implicate Jackson in some things. As unlikely as that might be, there's always a possibility that could happen. Because again, this is another trial where it's not even remotely over right now. So there's ample time if something like that was to come out. But as it looks like right now, bro, this is all you. And you have so much as a young person, just not even related to the athlete thing solely. As a young person, there is so much for you to be looking forward to. And you allegedly, with something like this, could throw it all away. I mean, jeez, man. So, in regards to this, we get an update last week on some charges in regards to this being brought forth. So, per ESPN, from Raimondi and Rothstein, quote, the Miami-Dade state attorney brought 4 charges against Atlanta Falcons edge rusher James Pearce Jr. on Thursday in relation to a February 7th incident involving WNBA player Rickea Jackson, according to a court document. Pearce Jr., 22, has been charged with 3 felonies, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, fleeing and eluding police, and resisting an officer with violence to his or her person. A 4th arrest charge of felony aggravated stalking was changed to a misdemeanor. End quote. And per Sports Illustrated as well, they say, quote, additionally, the aggravated battery of a law enforcement officer charge was dropped. This charge, if convicted, would carry a minimum sentence of 5 years and potentially more. I think it spanned up to as large as, well, you know, I'm not going to assume that. Because I think that initially, I was about to say 15. No, they take aggravated battery against officers very seriously, especially in Florida. I'm believing it's more, so I'm just going to leave that open. I'll have to look back at that in my own time. But yeah, to have that one go down, especially if that was looked at as potentially the most severe punishment, that is huge in Pearce Jr.'s case. But all these felony reports still look bad. No matter what, if this all stands and he's actually found to be indicted on them, that's going to go on his record. And that is a hard thing to shake. Once that happens, they're going to want access to that. And that is going to be on pretty much every single thing you apply for moving forward. Not a rap sheet you want to be building up in that way. Not at all, in his case. But all of them, again, tie into all of the material that had come out previously. I guess, in this case, the idea of, again, just, even with 7 people surrounding him, he tried to throw them off and try to get back into his car and away from the scene entirely, which would tie in with the resist to arrest and the fleeing and eluding police in terms of getting in the vehicle as well. Once again, it sucks to hear about something like that. It genuinely does. Like, again, I can't attest to what was running through his mind. But it's like, yo, at a point, man, you have got to find a way to move forward. Like, there is more out in front of you than that. And you just get yourself into a situation where you're so hung up on that you literally, at this point, the tone in which they're using, it's almost as if, again, yes, he might have, truly had feelings for Jackson, especially in the early part of that relationship. That much could be true. I mean, you're both going to Tennessee. You already share the connection of being athletes. And, being amongst each other for all that time could create for an opportunity to deepen your conversation and get to know each other at a far better way and rate, mind you. So all that could be legitimate. But dude, this might have gone, with the way it's looking, from just solely a genuine love thing to now obsession. You are trying to track down where this person is. You are going to people's houses, unnamed people's houses, to get a handle on whatever and do potentially whatever. And you're constantly on the phone trying to call her, text her, get an answer from her, get a response out of her in some way, allegedly. And once it happens again, you're already close enough to where she lives that you then decide to start chasing her. Allegedly. It just does not, make it feel even, as authentic as it once was. That is truly obsessive behavior. And again, it's like, that's just crazy, man. Again, if, there were rumors about him potentially cheating on her, and they weren't true, if there is merit to this, like, that is pretty rough. But you still can't. You cannot get to this kind of level. You just can't. Now, as his legal team states per this CBS quote right here, quote, Pearce maintains his innocence and urges the public to understand that while allegations have the power to shape a narrative, that it is hardly the full, complete story. End quote. And again, that's fair. That's a fair point. There is still far more to be found, potentially. Again, Jackson, as more evidence comes out, could be, found with more, not going to say compliance, but there could be more involvement on her end depending on what exactly they get out of this. If they provide the right documentation. But Pearce Jr., like, even if this isn't the full story, as we look at everything that's come out to this point, brother, do you have a true understanding of the situation that you're in? Do you have a true understanding of how bad this looks? I'm sure there's been a bug in his ear about that. Whether it be from the legal team, whether it be from his PR team. And of course, the silence, complete silence on it from the Falcons' perspective. All of that looks optically bad. And apparently in that same microphone video, there were mentions that with a suspension in Pearce Jr.'s case, if it lasts for long enough, because of course the NFL is going to try to navigate this in their own way, there is a world in which he loses the guaranteed money on his rookie contract if one is triggered. So, no matter what happens in the civil case, this extends far beyond that. And it's just an all-around situation to tie them together. Both of these cases, just all-around tragedy. I mean, you're trying to move forward. You're trying to make a name for yourself. You're trying to uplift those around you and secure generational wealth for you and yours. Especially with James Pearce Jr. right now. And him being in his position is just a 22-year-old potential second-year player. And again, in general, just being a person out on the street that people can look up to, can respect, can say that they want to be around. And with cases like these, especially in Lee's more so, regardless of what the verdict may say, it is generally going to be hard to find many people wanting to be by their side again or even support them in the same ways that they may have once been so willing to do. As multiple articles state, to just get into them both, quote, the court granted Jackson's request for protection and set a permanent injunction hearing for April 21st. So that'll be the next potential update for this James Pearce Jr. situation, barring anything else. So I will put that down real quick. Injunction hearing for Jackson. All right. Well, not restricting. Yeah. Jeez. Okay. And then, all right. Is there an update on a hearing for Lee at this time? Let me see. All right. Well, yeah. Preliminary hearing. This was, and okay. Well, they say on this WDEF article that Darron Lee is still being held in custody without bond. Just think about that. We don't have, a full-fledged idea of what happened in that case. And they decided that even with that limited information, they are holding him without bond in jail right now. It's crazy, man. But to this point, no, it doesn't look like there's an update on a new hearing for Lee at this time. So it's just something that I genuinely have to be checking in on every now and then. There may be, whenever anything major comes out, there will probably be something about it. But for right now, they don't seem to have true dates, I should say, lined up just yet on the situation. When they do come out, well, we'll definitely see. But that'll do it for this one. And man, again, like I gotta keep on, stressing that point. But like I said, these kinds of videos are not gonna be ones where I'm gonna go and say that, because there is no way, shape, or form in which that would possibly be something that I'd intend with serious matter like this. Like, you're not going to have a good, easy time trying to absorb all of this different information. That's just not how you can expect that to go at all. But the goal is to at least be informed. And, with some of those tangents, I just still hope I'm doing as best as I possibly can to be as fair and objective about everything as possible. That's ultimately what matters the most in a situation like this. Not how much someone might have liked the video necessarily or not. That's weird. Like, I'm not looking for something like that at all. The information matters the most. And the people involved in the case. Whether it be the NFL players in regards to my coverage of this sport, or in regards to these victims. They all matter. They all have their part to play in that situation. In some point of time, they will get their due. Hopefully, with the full truth in order. Peace.